Oh, hi there. Welcome back to Braving the Bright Side. I'm so glad you're here. Now, normally we dive into stories of resilience, laughter, and finding light in unexpected places. But every so often, it feels important to slow down and just share a little more directly with you. I'm going to try something different today. I like to think of these moments as a coffee break, a pause in the middle of all the busy noise, where it's just you and me talking for a bit. No big production, no long interviews, just me opening up parts of my soul and brain that don't always get airtime. Today's coffee break is a personal one. It's been 25 years since my mom passed, and I want to reflect on what that means, what that feels like, how grief has shaped me, how love lingers, and how we can still brave the bright side even in the shadow of loss. So grab your cup, settle in. Let's share this moment together, shall we? Pass the stevia. I don't use sugar. Thanks. Now, none of my podcasts are scripted. I have a general idea of questions I'll ask and the general idea of the story that the guest wants to tell. So, I have a general idea of what I want to do. And even then in post, I'll edit some stuff together to kind of keep the flow going and tighten it up if need be. I try not to, mess with it too much, but if need be, I do a little bit of editing. Here, I'm going to just try to shoot from the hip. I'm just going to hang out and talk to you and tell you how I'm feeling. And just kind of let it flow from there. So, apologies ahead of time if it's sloppy, if it's all over the place, but please know that it's raw and it's unfiltered and it's from my heart and soul. So here we go. This year kind of snuck up on me. September 8th, 2025 marks 25 years since my mother's passing. So, my mother's death is legally allowed to rent a car if need be. It just kind of came out of nowhere. One of the big ones for me about my mom's passing and years afterwards was 2019. That was the year where I had officially lived longer without her than with her by 1 year. And that was brutal. That was the one that was a heavy one that I was not looking forward to, that I was kind of counting the years down to. So I was very, very aware of that. But 25 years is kind of crazy. Does not feel like it at all. September 8th, 2000, my mother passed away. Amazing woman, to say the absolute very least. Warm, funny, avid Philadelphia fan, especially Phillies, diehard Phillies fan, diehard Eagles fan. If you ever wondered where my positivity comes from, if you're ever annoyed by my positivity, you can go ahead and blame Bonnie Bradley, my mother. She had this insane ability to take whatever anger I had, whatever negative thought I had, whatever kind of resentment or the world is ending kind of feeling. And she had the ability to kind of turn it on its head and kind of unravel it and showcase it back to me in a way that's a positive, or a way to show me that it's not the end of the world, or to show just how small that is in the grand scheme of things, and that life is still very beautiful. The world is still very beautiful. My life in particular was not awful, and it was still very beautiful. And time after time after time after again, I remember sometimes I would storm into home after a horrible baseball loss or something happening at school that was obviously going to destroy my life in second grade, and just knowing like there is no way she can turn this into a positive. And lo and behold, I'd storm in, drop my backpack on the ground, go up and be like, "Mom, get this." And she'd be sitting there at the table with her coffee, Weather Channel in the background, or ESPN, and cigarette lit. And I would hit her with these news. this devastating news that I got, or something that ever happened. And she would listen to me, and she would look at me, and she'd be like, I'm really sorry to hear that. But look at it this way. And I was like, oh my God, come on. Really? But that was her in a nutshell. Her life was not always pristine and beautiful and full of light. And I'm not going to go into crazy detail here. If you ever want to know the story, I can gladly tell you. But long story short, her life was a long, long road that was littered with a bunch of different bombs going off. Whether it's alcoholism, whether it was just feeling underappreciated at home, feeling trapped, feeling stuck. Her life wasn't always the prettiest. It wasn't always the easiest for her. And I think that's what helped shape her outlook on life. And kind of hardened her to no matter what, look for the bright side in everything and anything. Even when her own life was kind of crumbling around her, she made it a point to look for the bright side for other people. And I've never forgotten that. And that's something I've carried. That's something that's inspired me every day. It's something that's inspired this podcast, obviously. Given the name of the podcast. But what does 25 years really mean? 25 years when you're without your mother is, it's a bizarre feeling, right? It's, the grief never goes away. It's cliche, but the grief doesn't go away. It just kind of lingers on and becomes part of you. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to just kind of pull out the memory of my mother out of the closet, dust her off, and be like, here we go, September 8th. Here you go. See it? All right, I'm sad, right? Okay, cool. Here we go. And then I put it back in the closet, and then I go about my life. I kind of did that for a while, through many years when I was younger. I think mostly because I didn't want to linger on the memory of my mother too long, because I figured if I lingered on the memory of her and I thought about her for too long, then I would think about, what did she think about me? And what did she think about my life? And what did she think about my choices? And I couldn't process that. In order to process that, I would have to sit down and really feel that and really go through it. And in no way was I prepared to do that at all for a long, long time. So yeah, for the longest time, I obviously missed my mother. I obviously loved my mother, but I did not. I would douse myself in anything that would numb me up or distract me, in any way, shape, or form, from the idea of just constantly remembering my mom, out of pain, and also out of what I said to you before. It was just, if I thought about her too long, then I would have to think about all of it, and all of my life as well. It was no secret that after my mom passed away, I was obviously devastated. It was my best friend in the world, and it was my Phillies watching partner. We watched all the games together. I would annoy the crap out of her because I would want to pretend to be Darren Daulton, the catcher of the Phillies. I'd make her throw a tennis ball to me, and I'd pretend I'm the catcher, and I would make her do this for hours. And she would just be sitting at the table trying to drink her coffee at 11 o'clock at night. And I'd be like, all right, Mom, throw me a slider. She's like, yeah, sounds great. And then for hours, she would throw me the tennis ball, and I would pretend to be a catcher for the Phillies. Those are memories that I'll never forget. And we watched every Phillies game all the time. Diehard Phillies fan. And when she passed away, it was, I think I said it in the first episode, it was a part of me passed away. A part of me was like, well, shit. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and lock that away. This fucking sucks. I cried enough as I could cry. I felt as much as I could. I am going to pick my shit up. I'm going to go to Philly. I'm going to get the hell out of town. I'm going to just do me, obviously. And that's what I did. I did me. I didn't do a very good job. That's for sure. But I just went off and did my own thing. And it was fun. And it was cool. There was definitely highlights, and, as much of a mess I was at times, I don't really regret a whole lot. But in that me doing me, I absolutely refused to acknowledge the pain that was still very much resonating in my heart and my soul from losing my mother at such a young age. And like I said before, it was really hard for me to come to terms of sitting in it and then thinking about my mother for too long. So I didn't. So I went amongst life, and it's not that I was disrespectful or just never thought about my mother, but um, it was tough. I definitely I spoke very highly of her. I tried to honor her at times when I could, but other times I was just, kind of just limping around life, um, trying to douse myself in whatever I could. And I would openly tell people that I miss her and that I loved her, but I didn't really live a life that I feel like she would be proud of. So therefore I hid my consciousness from her, from the memory of her, if that makes any sense. As often as I could. Sometimes it was inevitable. I have 7 sisters that each part of them reminds me of my mother, so it was almost impossible anytime I ever talked to them or hung out with them, which I appreciate. But for the most part, I was just doing me. And then every September 8th, we would go to a bar, cry, drink, cry. And then September 9th, go back to work and just keep going, pretending, it is what it is, and I'm on my way. I'm back to going to doing me, doing what I need to do. So it was tough. And then I got sober. And my mother was, so my mom sobered up relatively early in my life. I don't even remember. I'm sure my sisters will correct me at this point. I can't even remember what age, but I remember being very young, probably I guess 6 or 7, maybe 8 or 9. But I spent a lot of nights with my little sister and my mom at an AA house, Alcoholics Anonymous house in Wildwood. And I didn't know it at the time. I just thought it was the greatest. Everyone was like super happy to see me. The place smelled like home because it just smelled of cigarettes and coffee, which is kind of what my house smelled like all the time anyways. I thought that was really cool. And then they ate pizza all the time. There's a guy named Luigi there who's really, really nice. We ate pizza all the time. And then next door was a pizza place that actually had Ninja Gaiden, an absolute epic arcade game. So growing up in an AA house wasn't the worst. And my mom was, killing it. Everyone loved her. She was like a celebrity there. Bonnie. That's what people would say. Bonnie. When we walked in, I was like, this is pretty cool, Mom. You're kind of like the shit here. I didn't say that. I was like 7 years old. But it was cool in my eyes. And it was bizarre, I remember that house like yesterday. And, it wasn't until years later I realized why we were there. I mean, not that it was a bad thing at all, but, as I got older, I was like, oh, and she kind of explained it to me, and I understood it, and I had the utmost respect for my mother, for that. And, the memories there I'll never forget. And the fact that she stayed sober through so much shit towards the end of her life, she stayed sober through it, is an absolute testament to the kind of woman that she was. That has absolutely played a massive, massive part of my sobriety. I don't really have, I don't make it a secret that I don't really go to AA. I did in the beginning. It was great. It wasn't really for me though. And that's not me disparaging AA in any way, shape, or form. That's just for me. So when people ask like, how do you stay sober? It's a bizarre question. Not a bad question in terms of why anybody would ask me that, but it's a bizarre question because I sometimes don't have the answer to that. How do I stay sober? I don't know. I want to say it's a couple different parts. It's equal parts that the life I have now is unbelievably insane in terms of I could never have pictured it before when I was drinking. And I mean that. I absolutely mean that to 1,000%. That the life that I lead right now, this very day, in this very moment, is an absolute dream, a fever dream. For, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, Dan Bradley at a bar, smoking Camel Lights and slamming whiskey, and then jumping in his car and driving home. It's also equal parts the physical feeling of it. Going to the gym, it keeps me regulated and keeps my brain regulated. You know, being able to do and lift heavy things. I feel like people don't realize that the benefit of going to the gym and lifting heavy things, what that can do for you mentally and for your confidence, that you can do hard things when you lift, 200 plus pounds over your head. You're like, oh shit. Okay. Well, I definitely don't need a drink because I can do this. And then last but not least, my mother is an inspiration. And her sobriety, watching her stay sober, through all the shit is an absolute, inspiration that I do not take lightly. And honestly, kind of circling back to what I said before, that I would lock the memory of my mother away from my consciousness because I just didn't want to deal with what she might think of my life. I think now, being sober and living the life that I live now and being hungry for life the way I am, I'm almost positive that she's up there smiling like hell, drinking coffee with the weather channel on us in the background. And I think that it warms my soul to really feel her closer to me now more than ever. Because I know I'm leading a life that she would not be ashamed of. Not that she would be ashamed of before, but that's just, I had shame on myself. I had guilt and shame, and I just didn't feel great about me. So why would I feel great about my mother, possibly looking down on me as I stumble through the world? So that's a big one too, is my mother shapes my sobriety and helps keep my sobriety going. The feeling of grief was a feeling that also I was afraid to feel for the longest time. And now I feel it a lot of days. Comes and goes. But yeah, 25 years is grief kind of comes and goes. And now that I kind of have sobered up and can feel everything, grief is a big part of that. And I have it comes in waves for different aspects of my life that I just wish my mother would be around, or I wish I could call her or have her over for coffee at 11 o'clock at night. There's a small part of me that's jealous of my older sisters, and I remember falling asleep and hearing her on the phone, drinking coffee, talking to my sisters, and there was such comfort in that. There's such comfort in knowing that she's out there drinking coffee, because she would stay up way too late all the time. And then she would talk to all my sisters all the time, and that was great. I like to think that she's still just drinking coffee late at night, except just hanging out, making sure we're all good down here. But yeah, grief comes and goes. I wish I could just hang out with her. Wish we could have celebrated the 2008 Phillies and the 2025 Phillies. Knock on wood. I wish we could have celebrated a couple Eagles Super Bowl wins. Wish she could have been at my wedding. Wish she could have met John Ralphio, Vigo. I just miss putting my head on her shoulder and her putting her hand on my head. And, she had a way of just calming my brain and my soul when it was just racing. But 25 years is a long time. 25 years is a lifetime. And, there's always that fear, right? If you've ever lost somebody, Um, there's that fear that you'll forget the sound of their voice. You'll forget the sound of their laugh. And there's so many different mediums now with phones and everything that I'm sure, nowadays it's not to be dark, but you can record all that shit and hold on to it. But a lot of my mom's voice and laughs and memories and are on VHS. So um, I do have to dig those up at some point. But in all seriousness, there is that fear, right? That I have not heard her voice in 25 years. So what if the voice that I have in my head of my mother's voice wasn't actually her voice, which I know is probably kind of crazy, but that's just what goes through my head sometimes. What if the laugh that I imagined her laugh to be, what if that's not how her laugh was? And I just, through the years, created my own version. But I'm pretty confident that I've nailed it in my head. But 25 years, I mean, that's kind of what hits my brain sometimes when I think about how long it's been. That's what scares the shit out of me. But also one of the reasons I know that that's bullshit is talking to my sisters. I hear her voice, I hear her laugh. Talking to my dad and him sharing stories and hearing and seeing him light up talking about her reminds me that I'll never forget her and what she sounds like. And talking about her to people who've never even met her. When I tell these stories of us watching the Phillies together, or the time where I was in a competition to try to win a shark watch, and I said to her, "Well, what are the chances I'm actually going to win this watch?" And one of the days where she was just frustrated with whatever else was going on, she said, "Well, because they're all a bunch of idiots, Dan, and you're not, so you're going to win." And to be fair, I did win that shark watch, so she wasn't wrong. To a magical summers of every single day at like 10 in the morning, marching down to the beach, whether it be me and my sisters and friends or me and my sisters and cousins, and just hanging out on the beach literally every day for like 10 hours. It was magical. It was magical. And there's moments like that when I explain these moments to people. That's when I realized that despite it being 25 years, 50 years, or however long it's going to be at some point in time, I will never lose the memory of her, the sound of her, and the feeling of her love. Much like my mother's own journey, it took me a minute to get there, to get to the good stuff, the bright side. I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. So, I guess in closing, grief is a crazy thing. It is. And I feel like it has different levels of how it feels, not even in terms of how long you've had it, but just really in terms of how it feels and how heavy it can be. And some days are worse than others. Some moments are worse than others. But even though it's always there, sometimes it's there and it's nice to still feel it, to remind you how important that person was and those memories are. And grief can be lovely at times. I know that sounds crazy, but it can be. And now, more than ever, 25 years later, grief is still there. And obviously, I'm not grateful for the loss of my mother at a young age that I was at. But I am grateful to still have that grief and to still visit and feel that grief to this day instead of hiding from it in shame. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Right? I mean, it's tough, but it's good to feel these things, remember, laugh, cry, and feel the memories and the grief. As rough as it may be, just celebrate the fact that you can feel it. I know I do. Grief does not have to erase all joy. You can live there simultaneously. But I feel like I've rambled on long enough during this coffee break. Thanks for hanging out with me. So it's 11:12 p.m. on a Wednesday night. I'm going to sip this coffee, just as my mom did many, many years ago. And thanks for taking this coffee break with me. Sometimes it's the shorter pauses, the little check-ins that end up meaning the most. Grief doesn't really go away. It just weaves itself into who we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's life, it's humanity. But sharing it, even in moments like this, helps it make it feel just a little bit lighter, a little bit more normal. I'll be back soon with more stories, more laughs, and more of the bright side. But for today, I just want to say thank you for listening, for sitting here with me, for joining me for a cup of coffee, and reminding me that none of us have to carry this all alone. I love my mom very much, and I miss her very much. And it means the world that you sit here and listen to me ramble about that, because it's important to me. If you yourself are struggling with grief, or you just need someone to talk to, I would love to hear from you. Reach out anytime at bravingthebrightside@gmail.com, or find me on Instagram at braving_thebrightside. Thanks for spending a little time on the bright side with me today. Until next time, keep braving it. One step, one sunrise, one cup of coffee at a time. I'll see you next week.